Hello and welcome. You're tuned in to the best in true crime talk radio. Darkness Radio presents True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Tim Dennis. Hello, Tim.
Hello.
So, real quickly, I do want to promote one thing. A lot of people keep asking me on all the different social media sites and through emails, when is the Holzer Files returning to TV? Unfortunately, because of the current COVID shutdown, I don't know. We're hoping that we'll still be back out this fall and be providing you with episodes. But this coming Friday, there is a mini marathon of the Holzer Files on Travel Channel. I believe it starts at around 3 p.m. Central or 3 Eastern. So check your local listings and times in your area on the Travel Channel. I believe there's 5 or 6 episodes that they're going to air in a row this coming Friday, which is, Tim, April 17th, I think it is, April 17th, 2020?
Something like that, yeah. Let me look.
I know, time has no meaning anymore. Once you've been locked out for a month, I've forgotten where we are.
It's all the same.
Yeah, Friday is April 17th.
We've got that going on this Friday on Travel Channel, so go check it out if you haven't had a chance to watch episodes. I'll probably pop online at some point on Friday on Twitter and tweet along with and answer any questions I can. So if you're interested, you can be a part of that. Joining us on today's show, we've got a very personal program, folks, and we're going to call all of our listeners into action with this episode. I want your help. We need your help to see if we can solve this cold case and get information regarding a tragedy that took place. So I want you to pass this show on to as many people as you possibly can. Help spread the word. Get this out there. Investigate this case. Look into the storyline, and if you know anything about this, help us out. All right, let's launch. Joining us today on the program, Tim. I love how happenstance and coincidence will align at points and bring people into our realm. And we spoke with Christian Barth a few weeks ago on the program,
right?
And I noticed on Twitter, of all places, somebody had responded to the posting, and I clicked on her link and information and realized she had a story as well, and reached out to her through social media and said, can we help tell your story and your sister's story? And she was polite enough to agree to come on with us. So joining us for today's program is Jenny Carrieri. And Jenny, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful that you reached out to me. I was really happy.
Well, I know that you've taken this very far, and you continue to tell this story, and you're trying to get help out there. You've put up billboards. You're keeping this story and your sister's memory alive in hopes of getting some answers. So I'd like to start off again, because this crime took place quite a while ago. Yes. I think, what is it, 23, 24 years now, unfortunately?
1996, yes.
We would like to help bring your sister to the foreground in the story and remind people this isn't just a statistic. This isn't just a murder victim that should be forgotten and we move on. But this is a person that had a beautiful life and a wonderful family. And I'd like to tell our audience about your sister and know a little bit about her and what led up to the tragic end of her life. So, Jody, this is your twin sister?
That's correct. Identical, 2 minutes apart.
Great. Were you the atypical twinsies where you were best friends all through life, or what was your relationship?
We were inseparable. We were inseparable till we were separated at the age of 17. So we spent, from the time we were born, we were always together. My mother dressed us alike. We shared the same rooms, same friends, same classes. Spent all of our time together. Yes, we were. Were
you different in personality, or did you mirror each other on that as well?
She, like I said, she was 2 minutes. I don't know if I said that. She was 2 minutes older, and she was more outgoing. I was definitely the shy one. They called me Jenny the Wimp. So she was definitely the stronger one, I believe, stronger one of us.
And throughout her life, tell me a little bit about Jody, and what was she like? What was she into? What did she do for her life, her entertainment, her fun?
She had a heart of gold. I mean, my dad refers to her as our, a sunbeam. She was just very kind and would do anything for anybody. Had this incredible smile, just a beautiful person inside and out. Both of us struggled. We come from a family of addiction, and Jody and I got, unfortunately, caught up in it. And that's what ultimately separated us at the age of 17. When we ended up in a treatment program, we were separated. That was the first time we were separated. And it was from then on that, we were in there for a long period of time. When we got out, she had started drinking again, and my parents had moved me out west to a dude ranch. And so I just continued because I had gotten sober. And I was afraid, I did not want to come back because I was afraid that I would go down the path again. So, that's really what separated us. But we were still extremely close, with the landline phones, calling each other. And I would come home and see her. I ended up out in California getting engaged, and she was living with her boyfriend in Baltimore. But like I said, we were still very close.
During the time that you were separated at 17, and you kept in touch during the treatment segment.
Well, we weren't in touch in the treatment. That was right. The first time ever. Yeah.
I was going to say, during that treatment segment, what was it like to be separated from somebody that was such an integral part of your life for so long?
Oh, it makes me emotional. Sorry, it was hard. No, it's okay. It's, it was the first time they separated us. I mean, we were never separated, and we considered us druggie sisters, and we couldn't talk to each other. We couldn't look at each other. I mean, we'd be in the same room. We were in this program called Straight. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it was very strict. And it was very hard to be separated. And then, when she got out, she started drinking. I mean, our drug of choice was alcohol. My dad was an alcoholic and a pill addict, but, we did get involved in drugs. But, mainly when she got out, she was drinking, and it was just very sad because she was just such an incredible person. But, she had the demons that it just took over her. And I mean, she was still able to function. Her boyfriend that she ended up being with was an alcoholic as well. And so they really drank a lot, and it was just really hard to watch, watch it,
Can completely understand.
Yeah.
And see her, this person that you have an undeniable and unshakable link with. But it's strange, right? This divergent path that then you both take. You're trying to lead this straight, clean life, watching her coming up together. You said the demons that she carried with her, were they different than the shadows that fell over your life as well?
No, I mean, we both started, we put my dad in treatment God, I don't know why I'm so emotional today. We put my dad in treatment when we were in elementary school. We had a family intervention, but then, he got out and started drinking again. And Jody and I started drinking his vodka when we were in middle school, and we crashed and burned, just in the next, over the years, it just was really sad, and, struggled with eating disorders. And I mean, we just really struggled a lot. And my dad, off and on. And, being in the treatment and just, it really hit me that I just really wanted to get out of there and straighten my life out. But like I said, we weren't talking to each other in there, and we both ran away at different times. I ran away early on, and then when she ran away, we were 18. So my parents didn't bring her back, but that's when she ended up in Baltimore. But then when I got out, I was, just to set the story, so you understand, I was dating one of the staff members, and my parents didn't like him. And my mom's family had retired to Wyoming, so they put me out on this dude ranch to get me away from this boyfriend. So that's how I ended up. They actually, I it's kind of joked about it. They kidnapped me to Wyoming. My mother, sadly, her brother was dying of a brain tumor, and they were taking care of him. My her parents were taking care of him out there. He was young. It was her stepbrother. So they put me on this dude ranch to kind of just get me away from this guy. And Jody was drinking heavily with her boyfriend and living in Baltimore. She was going to school and waitressing. And like I said, she was functioning. But I had cousins in California, and I just thought, I can't. I was afraid to come back. I didn't think I could do it, And so that's how I ended up out in California. But like I said, we still were very close. We racked up phone bills, and we're both very impulsive. Like I would just buy a plane ticket and fly home and see her, and so we're still very close.
When you would have those times that you could get together and spend time together, would she stay on the straight and narrow with you during those times to help you?
No, she still drank, but it wasn't out of hand. And I would try to help her, but, she supported, she didn't try to get me to drink. She had both of us terrible anxiety it was just, I feel just this, she was just drinking away this anxiety, but it was this vicious cycle, just because you just keep drinking and trying to be calm, and then you wake up and you're anxious again. And, so it was for, at such a young age, it was really, it had gotten bad with her. She had tried, she again had been in detox. And like I said, this was just all alcohol. She was just drinking, had tried to go to, AA, and she was really trying, but like with some people, it's just, it's some people don't get it,
So in the 5-year span between her getting out of rehab and her untimely passing, was her life, aside from the drinking, was it pretty normal and standard? Or was she involved in things that were dangerous?
She was not. She was very, I kind of liken it to being the life of an old lady. She was very routine. She and her boyfriend were always together. He preferred that they were at home at night drinking. He didn't want her to be at a bar. She was very, like I said, she was very anxious. She was terrified to live in Baltimore. She used to tell us she was afraid she was going to get shot. So she did her same, like when I say old lady, like had her routine. She waitressed for a lot of years. She waitressed at the same restaurant. She did her classes at Towson. She would have her boyfriend, if she was coming in late, like walk her in the house. She just wasn't one to be risky or do anything. That's why her, when we get to it that night, it was just, everything was very out of character for her. But she just lived this kind of like to me, it doesn't seem like a normal 23-year-old life. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause she was just very cautious, and I guess, and maybe her, her boyfriend was old. He was 14 years older. So they just, had their life where she worked and went to school, and most of her time was spent with him. But like I said, she was functioning and able to, she was getting close to graduating Towson. She was doing the work and school, like doing both things.
So life, for all outside views, really looked like a pretty normal life for anybody. There was nothing that looked outstandingly strange, bizarre, or dangerous as a lifestyle.
No.
Nothing more
not
than
at all.
any neighbor you might have that likes to drink and just lives their day-to-day life. This point in March of 1996, was she still with her boyfriend at this point?
Yes. Okay. They had gotten into a fight. Because so the one place she did like to go to was the Mount Washington Tavern, which was about 5 minutes from her house. That was the one bar that she would go, and he did not like her going there, her boyfriend. In fact, because sometimes when I'd come visit, I would go there with her. We'd go to dinner, and he did not like her being there. And it's unclear to me, even to this day, why, but there were rumors, and I didn't know, but I knew she liked the owner of the bar. She had a crush on him, and I don't know if that's why he didn't want her to go. I don't know if just because he wanted her to be at home with him. But the Thursday night, so they got into a fight on March 1st, which was Friday morning, but that Thursday night, she went to the bar, and he found out, and he was very angry. So that Friday morning, that's when they got into the fight, and he told her not to come home, that maybe she should go to my parents for the weekend that Friday, which they were about 45 minutes away, my parents.
Now, when your sister and her boyfriend, fiance would fight, was it ever anything physical? Was it ever anything dangerous?
No, I mean, not that I was ever aware of.
Okay.
I never knew that.
Hindsight is 20/20, right? And many times after a tragedy, people seem to come out of the woodwork that have insights. After the murder of your sister, did anybody come forward about claims or concerns they had about her boyfriend?
No, I mean, I've had people over the years say, I think he knows more. Something's not right. But I've had millions of people, I don't know about millions, but just about different people so it's hard to know. My family never felt like he was involved. Does he know more? Maybe. But like I said, I've had people come up to me like, there's more. He knows. He was involved in drugs. His dad was a bookie. So there's more. I think there's more that I don't know. Does that make sense?
Right.
Unfortunately, it doesn't look good for him, the fact that they got into a fight and he told her not to come home and he was asleep and she died like a minute from their house. So it doesn't
And I'm not trying to necessarily pinpoint anybody with a spotlight, but obviously as we're talking about this and you start off with the fact that they had a fight, I know the listener
doesn't sound good.
Would be in that same position of, well, what do we know about this guy and his background? And you said that his father was a bookie. He was involved in drugs. How deeply was he involved in drugs? Was it just a casual taker or was there more behind that?
I see. That's the thing is I did not know that he would. I don't know that to be true or not. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, right. That's just what people have said over the only thing that I do know to be true was that his dad was a bookie. And I remember seeing like he was a teacher and she would get expensive gifts. And I remember one time, this is in the 90s, coming to visit her and she had this like $700 and something coat. And I was like blown away because that's like a lot of money, to me. And I was like, he's a teacher. How is he? Do you see what I'm saying? Like there was a few things like that struck me. Maybe it's not odd. Does that make sense?
I completely follow you on that. Right.
And there would be cash around the house. So, there was just a few things that I look back on, we always liked Steve, felt close with him. We didn't talk to him for a lot of years after she died. We kind of separated for maybe like 17, 18 years. But I was another thought. Oh, when I did this Crime Watch Daily show about, maybe 5-6 years ago. And they were interviewing people on the street and they said, some of the neighbors had said, he acted really odd afterwards. And but that's the thing is you hear things. Of course he would act odd. His girlfriend was just murdered. So it's just hard to say. You know what I mean?
Now, take us through this last day or two in her life. She's gone to the bar that he does not like her to be at. They have a fight. His suggestion is maybe you just need to leave for a while so we can cooler heads prevail. Is that the kind of thought, or was he done with her at this point?
I get this sense he told her, to go to my parents for the weekend, that he just wanted her to go away for the weekend and then maybe see what's going to happen.
And this is on Friday the 2nd, is that right?
So this was March 1st, and then she died, then the wee hours Saturday morning. It was actually my parents' wedding anniversary, the March 2nd, yeah.
So when she leaves, what do we know?
She was working at a bank at that point. She had recently got a job at this Eastern Savings Bank. So she was there, I believe it was about 6 months or so. So she's at the bank and left there and met up with two friends who I had met one of them, but I didn't know them very well, and went back to the Mount Washington Tavern. So she stayed there till close, stayed there. And just the odd thing about it was for her not to have a plan that night, it was just didn't make sense. I mean, with her being afraid of everything, just to go to this bar and not have a plan to go to my parents, do you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. She goes to the bar, spends the evening there, and I believe it was the manager asked her to drive one of the employees home who was the janitor, and he was mentally challenged. He didn't speak very well. And not that she wouldn't do anything for anybody, but I just thought that was odd that she would have driven this guy home just in the middle of the night, with her being afraid of everything. So, I mean...
Well, more importantly, she's hanging out in a bar. Mm-hmm. She's a patron. She is an alcoholic. Is she in any condition to even be driving somebody home?
Right. I know.
What can you tell us about that aspect? I mean, what can we find out about her demeanor that evening?
Well, I mean, there was no drugs in her system. There was alcohol definitely in her system. She drove, she'd been at the bar drinking, drove this employee home. I mean, this is all within a couple mile radius of her home. After she drove the employee home, she apparently stopped by this packaging store, which was still open, and bought a 6-pack of beer, which would lead one maybe to believe that she was meeting somebody, and then went back to this parking lot right next to her house. There was a shopping center there it's now the Drum Castle Center, but it was formerly the Caldor. It was a department store. And so she sat there, which she never would have gone to. I mean, her house was right, like I said, a minute away. Why she wouldn't have gone home and even just sat in front of her house or gone to stay with one of her friends, because she would do anything for anybody. I mean, she moved a girl in with her that at some point that didn't have a home, that, got kicked out from wherever she was. I mean, she had lots of friends. So for her just to go sit.
As you've said, though, I mean, here's somebody who's had an emotionally upsetting day or two. Mm-hmm. And, because she has this heart of gold, does she want to burden your parents? Is she maybe embarrassed that she's been thrown out by her boyfriend?
I never thought of that.
Maybe she's in this mindset where I have no plan because she's wandered into uncharted territory at this point. She's been politely perhaps asked to leave her own home. She doesn't want to burden her family. You're not in town. Do you really tell friends I don't have a place tonight and feel, that I hate to use the word shame, but there's that kind of shame of feeling ill prepared for such a situation. And then to stay, perhaps she doesn't want to stay out in front of the house because he's there and will see her, but staying right next to the house in that parking lot almost sounds like the safest place.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've never thought of it all like that. That's very interesting.
So she's right near her very own home. She's in now this parking lot. Is it a well lit parking lot?
I don't know. I really don't. It was next to parallel to a 24-hour gas station, and then across the 5-lane York Road was a huge Giant, there was a 24-hour Giant, which now that as you're saying all this, I'm thinking why wouldn't she have sat in that parking lot where there was people around? Do you know what I mean? With the grocery store.
Well, again, then you kind of run into the risk of, do you want to look like the homeless person sleeping in your car in the neighborhood you live in, where people might recognize you? Whereas if you sleep in a parking lot that's abandoned, is right there in the kind of hub of activity and very near to your home, Maybe by morning this will all blow over. I can go home and we can talk.
Yeah.
She is last seen in this parking lot, or how do we?
So witnesses. So when she was sitting in the parking lot, she ended up making a couple of phone calls. One was back to the bar, which I've heard different stories that she was looking for the owner of the bar. She was looking for a party. She was looking for drugs, which, the bar was known at that time for cocaine. And like I said, there was no drugs in her system, but she had been there since 5:30, 6 o'clock. If she wanted to if that was the case, why didn't she get them when she was there? You know what I mean? To go. So, I'm saying, so I don't know about that theory, but so she called the bar, and then she called, I told you about the girl that she had moved in with her. She tried to call her, and that girl at that point was living with her boyfriend. So she ended up talking to the boyfriend for 2.5 minutes, who was a cook they had worked, actually all of them had worked at TGI Friday, that restaurant. I don't know if you're familiar with that, TGI
Yes.
Fridays. So she ended up talking to the boyfriend, which I thought was odd, unless the girl was asleep. Her friend was asleep. But after the phone calls, I don't know the time period. Witnesses saw an African American approach her vehicle, and they said that Jody's window was rolled down, and that there was some sort of conversation, and then he ended up shooting her from behind. Like, he walked away and shot her from behind. And she was able to get out of that parking lot. It was not a straight shot, and drive across the 5 lanes. It's either 4 or 5 lanes of York Road, and go into that huge shopping center where the Giant is. There's a Boston Market and a tire store. And there was a total.
And what time is it at this point?
Like 3:30 in the morning.
And there was enough activity at 3:30 in the morning that people could recognize that it was an African American man. They watched long enough to see the entire thing.
6 witnesses.
Okay.
6 witnesses that described all this. It's crazy. There was.
Now, do we know were these witnesses together? Were they independent witnesses that did not really know one another?
I know about 2 of them because. It's crazy. I've had so many people reach out to me over the years because I've tried to get information from the police. I actually had one of the witnesses, and we can get into that later, but I had one of the witnesses reach out to me after I did that show with Oxygen. They saw it and reached out to me. So I'll tell you about that. So there was 2 truck drivers that were at the Boston Market unloading chicken, and he's the one that saw. So Jody came into this parking lot. This is what he saw. This witness she circled the lot like she had been shot and her spine was severed, but she was able to drive around this lot, and then she hit a curb. And this witness saw Jody at the top of the lot. Saw her come in, and then saw the suspect in the white BMW sit at the top of the entrance of the lot and watched him watch her. And as soon as Jody stopped, he pulled up slowly. And this is in front of the 24-hour Giant, which was open. And he came up to Jody and reached in her car. And the witness saw him put her car in park because she hit a curb, turn the lights out, and take items from her car and slowly leave the parking lot. So there was the 2 witnesses in the Boston Market. He's the one that went across the street, and the phone lines weren't working. I guess it had something to do with the security system in the Boston Market. He ended up going across back over to that 24-hour gas station and called 911. So I don't know who the other witness. I don't know other than the 2. I don't know where the other 4 were. Are you following me?
I am. I guess I follow what you've said, but it gets a little confusing here. So put me back in the parking lot, the empty parking lot. She's in her car, and this man approaches her. Mm-hmm. Is he coming from a vehicle? Is he just walking in the parking lot? Is there any eyewitness testimony to either side of what happened before and where he went after she drove out?
So the African American was in the white BMW. He came upon her and he pulled up next to her, and then he followed her. He shot her, and then he followed her after he shot her, with witnesses around, with a 24-hour gas station there. Followed her across as she came across York Road into that other shopping center and stayed at the top and watched her. And then once she stopped, like I said, with witnesses around, he had no qualms about doing anything, which is just very odd. And it's not, with all the different theories that have gone through, it's just not your tip. If he wanted to rob her, why not in the first parking lot where there's less people around and just put her window was rolled down and just put the gun to her and say, give me your money. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Why shoot her, loud gunshot, 24-hour gas station there, and then follow her into another open public place and then go get into her car? It's just a very odd thing. And
when we get a look at her personal effects after this, is her purse still there? Did he take any money? Did he take anything that we know she would normally have with her?
So the police, it was just very odd. They'd say something was taken out of her car, but then they'd say her purse wasn't there, and she had that where she was making the phone calls, the bag phone that my parents got her back in the 90s, the little carry phone.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So both of those were gone. So he took, so when he reached in, that's what he took, apparently, even though they'll just say, we don't know what was taken, but those were gone. Those items were gone.
So her purse and the phone, both taken.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that would make sense in a smash and grab anyway, right? Those would be two items that would be taken.
But why not take it early on?
You're right. Why? That's where we start to run into, the hiccups, unless, of course, you've got a criminal who doesn't have the heart to pull the trigger while looking somebody in the face.
Yeah.
Turns away and makes a snap decision to take the shot, thinking she's going to just drop there, and then he can reach into the car. But the fact that this guy calmly follows her across, doesn't seem to care that there are eyewitnesses watching this unfold, gets out of his vehicle, goes into hers, takes what he wants, puts her car in park. Now, if he's doing all this, is there any forensic work done of fingerprints? Do they locate anything telling?
There are fingerprints. There are video. There are the witnesses. There's a description of the suspect, the vehicle. There's a lot. So that's why it's very frustrating that her case isn't solved. They said the cameras were down in the giant parking lot that night where she ended up.
Which, unfortunately is not a foreign concept. A lot of these places have fake camera sets that they're really cameras that just point to give people the idea to watch your P's and Q's. And especially, I would guess, in the 90s, that would have been an expensive setup where it's just as easy to put together these cameras that don't really film. Or may only do in short burst cycles where they're just doing those photographs every 10 seconds as opposed to actual videotape. So there may be nothing telling that was really clear. And unfortunately, it's strange to me, right? We've got satellites that can read license plates from outer space, but we can't get a clear closed circuit TV camera that can identify somebody breaking into your store. It's always blurry. Bigfoot has a better photographer than most criminals at these locations, right? That's what's so uncanny about it. Even in today's market, in 2020, a lot of the security cameras are not up to par. You've got HD cameras on your phone that can, beautifully detail concerts and footage and things like that, but we still can't get a good security shot. He leaves. The phone, does it ever get pinged? Does it go back online? What do we know about her phone that was stolen?
They never told me anything about that. I mean, I would hope. I mean, their whole investigation has been the problem is, my concern over the years with all the work that I've put into it and just seeing their lack thereof and missing so many things and them being dishonest with me and disrespectful and inappropriate. And I mean, it's just ongoing hell with them. So it's
we'll get into that aspect here then too. I want to dig deeply into this case.
It's hard to say whether they,
right.
Yeah.
It should be, right? That's strange.
You hope that they
would tell you some of these aspects. Okay. Now I understand that you have to be cautious as well, because there are certain aspects of the case you've got to keep close to the vest so that if
I don't.
you capture somebody, right. I know for you, but I'm just saying overall,
I'm open.
People want to, the law has to be very cautious in what they can release, because if there's some aspect of this that is not public, like the fact of he took this phone and where he called from or who he called to or whatever occurred, that could be very useful in prosecution. So I understand there could be aspects of that are held back, but she shot, he goes across the street. The eyewitness calls 911. How quickly does emergency services arrive for your sister?
I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that this witness that reached out to me said that he didn't trust the police when they got there. That's what he told me. He said he didn't trust them, and that also they were very lackadaisical. It was just he just had a bad feeling about it all.
Not that I'm making any kind of excuse for law enforcement in the situation, but what can you tell us about that area? I know, having just been in Baltimore a year ago, one of my friends that came to visit said, oh, yeah, you should get this app, and it actually tells you what crimes have just taken place. And I plugged in and we laughed, and literally within a block of of the bar we were sitting in this hotel, there was a stabbing a block away. There was a shooting the opposite side of our building. There was a hit and run a block the opposite direction. There were 2 or 3 robberies that were reported, all within the span of 1 hour within a block, a city block around the hotel we're in. So Baltimore has kind of a dodgy reputation at this point.
What was the worst?
Yeah, what was it like that?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. She died on the city-county line. So she was in the area where she died. It was pretty shocking. I mean, that just didn't happen where she was. It was a very big shock to the community. I mean, of course, Baltimore City. I mean, it's gotten worse over the years, but the crime rate in Baltimore County is incredibly, less than with the city. So yeah, it was definitely not something that would have happened where it did. It was a shock to everybody. But county took over, even though she was on the line. The county did take over the case.
And he says to you he didn't trust the police. Did he go into any specifics about why? He said that because they were kind of lackadaisical, but
he didn't go specific, but he just kept saying to me that he didn't trust them. And he said he tried to reach out to them over the years, and they really wouldn't take his call. He would just try to talk to them. But yeah, he just told me, and we talked about, like, I wanted to try to meet up with him and his partner and get together. This just happened like in the last couple of months that he reached out to me, and we've talked on the phone a couple times, and I really wanted to try to get together. They're down in about probably a couple hours from me, but I mean, he was very into Jody's case and wanting to help, and so.
Now, I don't want to be a spoil sport on this as well, but what do we really know about the guy that's contacting you with these claims and information?
The witness?
Right. Is his name listed in any of the police reports as the eyewitness? How do we know he's the one that made these calls? And I'm not trying to turn up a weird spotlight, but just trying to get an understanding. There are a lot of people that inject themselves into stories, and especially after they've appeared on TV.
No, I get what you're saying.
Right.
No, I totally get what you're saying. I don't know. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with him. I've had a few of the reporters talk to him, from Baltimore and DC, people. So,
So reporters, people that would be good at digging through and getting a little bit more information.
Yes.
What did the reporters come back to you with in speaking with him? Were they shocked or are they sadly not surprised to hear this kind of report coming in?
With Baltimore?
Yes.
I mean, everybody
regarding the entire case.
Across the world thinks that there's something not wrong with her case. I mean, I have random people reach out to me from all over the world. I've had police officers. I've had people everywhere reach out to me so the reporters are all with me that they think that there's something not right with her case, whether, they've botched it in the beginning. So everybody, I mean, I've never had one person in all these years call me or reach out to me or send me a letter or do anything to say, this sounds legit. I mean, I've done interviews all over the world. I mean, I did interview with Lester Holt, Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz said on national television, I mean, they reached out to the police department and they wouldn't even speak to him or his producers. They said, don't bother. You're not going to get anything from us. And he said, this is the hardest case I've ever had to deal with. Hardest, dealing with Baltimore. So she died. So Jody died on the Baltimore City County line. And then I had a lawsuit trying to get her records. Baltimore City Police Chief reaches out to me where the murders, like I said, are through the roof, wants to help offer assistance on Jody's case. And Baltimore County tells him to butt out. They don't want anybody in. They have the case with the same detective since day one, 24 years later still, which has been part of my battle is I want a fresh pair of eyes. But it's like they have her case hijacked. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does, sadly. All right, so he calls 911, police and everybody get there. Is your sister gone?
She had died, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the wound, can you explain to us what had happened? You said she was shot. What exactly was?
So it went in the back of the car into the back seat into her spine. So the bullet severed her spine. So she was able to live for a little bit. But I believe, she was driving and she circled that lot and then when she hit that curb, I believe is when she died. That's what I'm thinking. And the car just stopped at the curb.
All right. Now it's a crime scene.
Right.
How is it handled at that point? Does news cover this? Is it just another day in Baltimore?
Well, they left the fingerprinting kit in the car when I gave it back to my parents.
They left the fingerprinting kit in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And
so, yeah.
She's gone. They've turned the car over to your family after they've gone through the investigation with it. How forthcoming? What are the police like to work with at that time? Do they seem sympathetic to what's going on? Is there anything that stands out to you or your family from the experience working with them? Not with 20 plus years of kind of anger and resentment built up towards that, but I mean, in reviewing that in the moment, what was it like for the family?
So for me, I was completely devastated. I was not, my whole family was, but I was not involved in the investigation for quite a few years because I was barely able to function with my anxiety. It was just really, really, really hard. I couldn't even be alone in a room by myself for a couple of years. I was just really, really struggling. So my father, I don't know if you knew this, he was a lawyer and prosecuted drug and violent crime in where we grew up.
No, I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, for another county. So he was, and I, if you remember, was the shy one. So I very shy and never would have confronted anybody. So he was the one that was in contact with the police. My dad was from Nashville. He was from the South. He was a gentleman. He would never question them, would trust them. So what happened, though, is that my dad ended up getting cancer. And so we spent after Jody died, I forget what year it was, that he got cancer. But so we spent a lot of years, I want to get emotional again. Sorry.
You don't have to apologize. It's very hard.
It's hard.
Understand.
Yeah. So he and I were very close too. But he did get sober. He went back to treatment again, and after he got sober, he found out he had non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and so we spent then our focus was on trying to take care of him, and for years we were doing treatments, and then he died, and but it was after he died that I really started to get involved with Jody's case, and just kind of I was up just trying to figure out what they were doing, because I felt like there was no progress, and that's when I really started hounding the detective and just trying to get everything I could, and so I just started reaching out to people and trying to get her story out there in the news, and that's kind of when it all started for me after my dad died, and it hasn't stopped. And the other part of it too is that you like my dad, like me, you think the police are doing their job. You don't question anything. But it was the more that when I did get involved, we just, you're just kind of waiting, what are they going to come up with? And then the more I did get involved, the more I was just stunned by what I would find out about the investigation. And that's just why I really put myself involved with it. I mean, and they told me that her case at one point was sitting in a closet. There was nothing else they could do. And I understand that there's lots of, and I don't expect special attention on her case, but there was a lot of things that hadn't been done. I mean, people that I found hadn't been interviewed, or people they told me they had interviewed. I mean, there's just so much that was just shocking to me and my mom. And
have you and your family ever commissioned a private investigator to? Well,
that's the thing is that's what we wanted to do, and that's when we filed several years ago the Maryland Public Information Act to get records, because they wouldn't even show us the original police report or the autopsy. We couldn't even see anything, and they denied it, the Maryland Public Information Act. So. Because they said it's an open investigation, like her case, but it's sitting in a closet and they have nothing else they can do on it. So we were going to get the investigator. So that's when the lawsuit, then we filed suit for the records. And, my mom mainly, she doesn't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of money, but we probably racked up it was close to $20,000 in legal fees trying to get her records. We got nothing. We got, it caused horrible stress, anxiety, within my family, my marriage, my children. It was just a really hard year going through all of it. And the police were just, their lawyers, they were very nasty. And I had at one point a meeting where their lawyers screamed at me and slammed the door in my face, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was devastated. It's because I had asked a question. But, they would send these 90-page motions, my lawyer would send something, and it was so unbelievable, everything they would do to try to keep my family away.
What did your lawyer say about all of this? Was
he thinks they're horrible.
Was this normal kind of protocol or what?
Well, I think it's unusual. I think it's different in every, I don't know if I'd say county, state, with as far as records for families and things like that. But what they're saying, because it's an ongoing investigation, that we can't have the information. But the bottom line is, how long can they consider it ongoing? My family wants to get a private investigator. You know what I mean? We want to, we want to find Jody's killer. And from seeing Like I said, I mean, I'm at the point in the last like year where I'm like, I've started my own tip line. I'm sending them information, like things that they didn't even do or know. Like, I mean, I seriously think the Boy Scouts could have solved her case like in the beginning. Like, I mean, a lot of people think like they're covering up, they're protecting somebody, but I really think they've botched the case. They messed up. They're embarrassed. There's just something that's not right. It's clear to us and to my family. Like, yeah, maybe my mom thinks they're protecting somebody. I forgot the question you asked me. I'm sorry. I don't even think I answered it.
Well, no, I'd asked about hiring a detective and getting
yeah.
So I asked if this was normal, if your attorney had said this is,
well,
normal.
He's never done this before. And yeah. I mean, a lot of people, it's like, I don't know if I'm the first, but I don't think there's many that have sued the county and the police to try to get records. I don't think that.
Right. If I could say one thing, he may never have done this before, but he knows the laws. He knows what they can and cannot do or withhold. Or is it simply because it's still under the blanket?
That's what they're under. Yeah. Is that that's what they're saying, is because it's an open investigation. And my thing is open investigation in the closet. Like, why won't you let my family have the records? What are you hiding? Like, people that have nothing to hide nothing.
You would think that, there should be some law in effect that after 20 years of ineffectual police work, that the cases could be released to independent investigators or to a state-run agency.
I've gone up to the governor's office. Yeah. I mean, I've gone everywhere to try to get it away.
What happens when the governor is approached?
Oh, everybody looks at me and I mean, I met with the Homeland Security Director because I did a billboard to the governor. I did one to the state's attorney. I did one to the governor. Like, I've done everything. But I said, there's been free DNA testing. When I did the interview with Lester Holt, they believe that the suspect touched her. He touched her clothes, and they have this MVAC testing where they can suck the DNA, and it was offered for free to come to do the testing on her clothes. They denied it. They won't get the same detective off the case. So that's been my thing. I wanted to meet with the governor's office, the county executive. I said, look, you've got to help me. Like, why won't they run this DNA? Why won't they put a fresh pair of eyes? And they all say, look at me. Oh, yeah, we'll help you. And then nothing ever happens. Nothing.
So this is the governor of Maryland, folks. One thing that we do know is that by writing into the local people, sometimes in droves, once they start realizing that this is public knowledge and public information and it's being put out there, they will examine these cases again, especially if they feel some kind of pressure. So if it's at all possible, should they write to the governor and insist that something be done? Would that help?
I'd be very grateful. Absolutely.
Now, you do have a tip line. There's a $100,000 reward for a tip that leads to an arrest and conviction in the case. The tip line is 410-200-6284. 410-200-6284. We have a link up for the Justice for Jody website. And, folks, it's Jody with a Y, Jody, Jody, Justice, then the number 4, Jody, Jody. It's on today's program, so you can find it. There are links there for the information, the tip line and such. So please consider taking a look at this and examining this case, but writing to the governor and insisting that this case be reexamined for Jody LeCornu. And that's LeCornu.
Good job. Yeah.
Let's get that out, folks. Start writing in and pressuring. And we've got a lot of free time on our hands right now. This is the time to start examining, and getting in front of governors, giving them the opportunity to re-examine some of these cases. I understand that they're dealing with other tragedies and the pandemic right now, but this might be a time for them to delegate and have somebody else look into this case. There seems to be no reason why one lead detective would be stuck on a case all these years when he's been ineffectual, why they wouldn't move it on to give somebody else a fresh chance to look at it, even if they think he may have messed up. I would guess that there's got to be enough ways that you could bury that and say, well, this wasn't available to us at that point, or, whatever, they could make it up, but let's just get the answers. Now, since you've put up these billboards, let's talk a little bit about that. You were actually inspired by the movie Three Billboards.
Correct.
So for our listeners that are not familiar, why don't you give a little bit of background on what that was and what your tact has been?
So I've always been trying to figure out ways to get her story out there. Once I really started reaching out to the media and watching that movie, I was just really taken by it and decided to do the billboard. So my first one was October 2018, and it just really to try to get to, because not a lot of people watch the news. I mean, I don't even watch TV. I don't watch TV. I can't even stand the noise. So to reach different types of audiences, and the billboard was just such a great way of getting to these people. So the first one came up in 2018, and we decided to do it near where she was shot. I mean, depending on where you put the billboards and how long, I mean, it just becomes very costly. I lost track. If I could sit and think, I've done maybe 12. I can't remember. I'm hoping to do more. But this one was Find My Killer, with the reward, and it just got a lot of attention. I mean, the day that I was doing the billboard, it was the day after our birthday that it came out in October. So it came out October 29th. And so I was going up to do probably like 5 interviews in Baltimore and had a panic attack on the way because I get very anxious. And then I'm getting a call from, it got so much attention. I'm getting a call from Headline News, CNN, and Good Morning America. Like, they want to interview me. So it was like great. Like, it got like a lot of attention. And then I just thought, I'm getting more, the more I get her story out there, I'm going to get to somebody that eventually hopefully knows something. And then I just went forward with it, and I liked it. So I decided to do the 3 billboards at the time. And then that just got a lot more publicity with, CBS Morning News and Lester Holt and Nancy Grace. Like, I did a lot of stuff, and, unfortunately we're still haven't found her killer, but I'm never going to stop trying. And I just feel like one day, like, it's going to happen, and it's hard. I mean, it's
if you're working kind of against the Maryland Police Department because they haven't been forthcoming.
It's been awful. The
tip line is to the police department, correct?
The tip line is I have my own phone number. I'm getting tips in.
So the 410-200-6284.
That's to me. Yes, that's to me.
And the leads, what can you tell us about that? What have you gotten many?
Some interesting calls. Yeah. I mean, I've gotten a call from quite a few. Yeah. But then the terrible thing is that I ultimately have to go back to the police, but at least I feel like I'm in control, because before the tips were coming to them, and now I feel like I'm getting information because I don't trust them. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I'm passing on the information that I'm getting. I mean, I've had calls from within the police department. I've had a call that I've been talking with a lady that worked in the police department and saw the tips coming in early on and had some information that was just very shocking that I felt wasn't followed up on properly. Like, it could be that
she was coming forth as a whistleblower to kind of let you know what was taking place. Did she believe that they did know who this killer was?
So she believes this was information about the bar Jody was in at the Mount Washington Tavern, the tip that came in and about that night, and somebody having to do with some of the employees there. And actually one of the manager that she spoke with in that parking lot that night ended up committing suicide. I didn't even, I don't know how many years later, but it was with regards to a whole scenario with Jody in that bar, which has kind of been something that my family has kind of wondered about.
Well, what do you mean?
She saw this.
He committed suicide, or was it a he or she?
The manager, Jody called into that she talked to that night.
So he committed suicide. And you believe that it was because of her case, or you know that it had something to do with her?
I don't believe or know. I just think it's odd. Like I had no idea until a couple years ago that he had committed suicide, because I didn't know. I just didn't know. I didn't know about that was the person Jody spoke to. Do you see what I mean? Like, the police haven't given us all that information about. I knew that she spoke to somebody at the bar. So I don't know that has anything to do with it. Who knows? It's just odd. But this lady that I've been speaking with was very concerned and upset, and really feels that there's stuff at this bar. And I've tried to reach out. There's still one of the employees and the janitor she drove home. But again, he's mentally challenged, that work at this same Mount Washington Tavern. It's different owners, but they won't speak to me. They won't speak to me. They get the bartender guy. I've reached out to him again because I'm working on some other interviews, and I wanted to talk with him, and he gets very angry at me. He's like, basically, leave me alone. I don't want to be involved in this. So I think that's odd. But
it isn't, unfortunately. A lot of people just don't want to get involved because it's something they have no power over, they don't know anything about, and they just don't want to be associated, because unfortunately the public is quick to kangaroo court, and just having a name associated with the crime can certainly involve somebody's good reputation into something tragic very quickly.
Yeah. But
I'm not making excuses for that person either. I'm just saying.
No, it's just
I do understand why some people are very frustrated.
I mean, I'm one that wants to help everybody if I can, or you know what I mean. Like, it's just frustrating that, you know, I think everybody's good and everybody wants to help, and I understand. Like, I understand what you're saying. It's just maddening in my position, just trying to get answers and information, and just, you know, I mean, I've had a lot of this over the years, friends of Jody and I, like people that have bailed on me. They don't want to be involved because murder, you know, you don't want to be involved with murder. You don't want to be like, because I've done it, like I said, all the interviews I've done, shows, like they're like, we want some of your friends, we want to talk to people. And like, people just don't want to be involved with it. Like they're like, and I do get sad, but I understand, you know, like they're like, well, I don't want to be like, they're afraid for themselves, like something's going to happen to them, or, you know, I'm like, if anything were to happen, it might probably be me, because I'm like reaching out to prisoners and murderers and criminals, and I go places. So, but like, I have no fear about any of that, you know? So
with that said, have you ever had somebody reach out claiming to be the killer, asking you to stop it or silence?
No, but I've reached out with all the work that I've done. I've gotten the information on the two suspects that they claim. And so one of them is in prison, and I was communicating with him. I was writing to him. I was trying to go see him. There's another one that I reached out to on social media, and he was very angry and scary. And I mean, I've gone to meet people in Baltimore. I've gone other places. I mean, I've done, and that's caused, among other things, a lot of stress with my husband, because he's very upset because we have 3 children. He's like, you're putting us in danger. And I get it, but I just get this in this mode where I'm like Superwoman, and I feel invincible, and I don't like, it's like I don't think before I jump. I just do things, you know, like this prisoner that I was reaching out to, who they say is the number one suspect. I found out from him when I was speaking with him that he had a brother that lived about an hour away from my house. And I had a day off work, and my husband was out of town. I was like, well, the first time I went to try to find him, it's odd, but I was taking my daughter, you know, those like jump zones, birthday party things. So it was happened to be at this place like an hour from my house. And so, And I was like, I perfectly like planned it. I was like, well, I'm going to drop her off at this birthday party and I'm going to go find this prisoner's brother in this dive bar that he works in, you know? And I mean, but then I'm like, God, like maybe I am crazy. So I drop her off and I told Mom,
what was the concept? What was the concept of going to find the brother? Does this killer
just because I was going to give
his
him
brother?
Is he what?
Was the guy that's in prison implicating his brother in this case?
No, but I found out he had a brother and a half brother, and people would tell my family early on when we started raising money for the reward fund, these people would turn their mothers in for money or whatever, you know, and I thought, you know, let me go talk to the brother. I'll just share with him the reward poster. You know, I was just going to kind of play stupid, like just, I hear you and your brother might know something about my sister. I don't know what I was going to say. I was just going to go. You know what I mean? Like I'm desperate. And so just to see if I could get any information, anything. You know what I mean?
Right. So
so I went. I dropped her off.
Right.
I told the mom. I said I'm going to go to the grocery store and I'll be back. So I go and find this guy, but he was not there. So I ended up going back again, and I found him. And I left the reward poster at that time, and I never heard anything from him. And then his brother from prison. See, I had opened a P.O. box, and I was communicating with him. And after I went to visit the brother, there was no more communication from the prisoner, and the brother never communicated with me. And then just this last fall, I went and found. No, I apologize. It was this past January. I found the brother, and he was there. He came out. I went into the back. He's a cook or something in this bar or dive restaurant, and he walked up to me, and I said, "You know who I am?" I went into the back. They sent me in the kitchen, and he looked at me. He said, "No," and then I told him, and then he hugged me, and I said, "I just want to know if you and your brother know anything about my sister." And he was like, I don't. He's like, I don't know anything about your sister. You know, and I'm so sorry. And so I don't know. It's hard to say, but I mean, I like I said, they're half brothers, and he said they're not very close. So I don't know, other than what the police tell me, that this guy that's in prison is their number one suspect. But they didn't know he had a brother. And so that's, you know, one of the 20 things that I've sent to them. Like, did you know this guy has a brother? Like, you need to go talk to him. 23 years later. So they went and talked. He told me, he said, yeah, the police just came and talked to me. This is 23 years later.
And what did, now the guy that's your number one suspect, he did communicate back and forth with you for a while?
Yes. He's in prison for he got high with a stripper and tried to kill her, strangle her, stab her or something. And so he's in prison. He's near me. He's about like I said, a little over an hour away. And he and his family were in Baltimore, but they grew up on the Eastern Shore where I am. And when I was meeting with the detectives a couple years ago, I said to the main detective, who's very cocky, I said, why don't you bring me into the prison and talk to him if you think he's the number one suspect? Not that I expect that he's going to confess to me, but who knows? I mean, it's all this time. Let's try something different. Maybe he'll go back and say something to somebody. Like, let's just think out of the box. And he's like smacking his gum at me, slouching back. And he said, well, why would he want to talk to you? So I was like, well, you know what? F you. So I walked out of there and I wrote a letter and put a picture of myself and told this guy who I was and my maiden name. And I said, put me on your visitors list. I want to come talk to you. So he just started writing me. I think he just didn't know what I was about. I think he thought maybe I was the police. It was these long letters about his life and God and what he's doing in there. And then I gave him my phone number and I told him to call me. And so we had a couple phone conversations. I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. But I was desperate, you know. And, you know, I finally asked him if he knew Jody. And he was very vague. And I don't recall if I know your sister. And so then it all came out with my husband that I was communicating with him, and it turned really bad in my household. So I had to I stopped doing any more communication. And then, like I said, then I went to go see his brother, and everything stopped. Do you see what I'm saying? But I just recently wrote him another letter saying that I wanted to talk to him again. But the thing with going into the prison is, in order to be on his list, he says, you have to send me your address. And I don't want to give him my address. So that's been my thing. But I think that anybody can find your address online, right?
Possibly.
Yeah, but I just can't get myself to send him my address. So I'm sort of at a, and then all this quarantine stuff's come up, and I'm just sort of trying.
Should you please don't, it's one thing if they're able to locate something, but don't make it easier.
Right. Exactly.
You shouldn't give the address, because again, why is he requesting an address? Seems very
because when I show up at the prison,
you have to show
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not giving him my address. I even went as far as calling I guess it's the warden. I was trying to talk to him to be like, look, can you please help me? I just want to come in there. I just want to talk to this person. Part of me honestly believes that he didn't do it, and that the police are pinning it on him. And that's really a lot of my motivation, is I don't trust the police. For years ago, they said, oh, we just think it's him. You should just go away now. So honestly, that's a big part of it, is I don't truly believe that it's him. Does that make sense?
I completely understand that. Right. What a horrifying existence all of this is. Just, no real answers, nobody forthcoming into the investigation. Have you reached out to an private investigator, to see if they even need access to police files and what they could do on their own?
I have talked to some. I've reached out to people, and part of it at this point is financially right now. I'm just not in the position. I'd love to have an investigative journalist, somebody take it on, really try to help me. That's kind of my next thing that I want to look into. I'm working on different things right now with her case that, may come into be that there is going to be an investigative, some with a company, what's it called? It's a production company that wants to do a series. So I'm working on some things that hopefully would bring in a private investigator, but if any of it comes through. But yeah, I would love that in a heartbeat if I could get somebody, involved. But the thing is they're very, I've had people reach out to me, for instance, somebody like Kelly Siegler. People are like, you got to get her involved. And she's got to be asked to be involved by the police. And so I've said to the police, would you have her, so-and-so, somebody involved? And they're like, no, nobody's getting involved. Do you see what I'm saying? They don't want anybody involved they don't want anybody looking at the case.
What a wall to run into on this. Now, listeners, if you have insight on this, other ways that perhaps she could re-examine this case. If you have some of that, can they reach out to you through your website?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. I have I definitely, and they can call my line, my email. I give you my email. I'm grateful for any suggestions or help or people sharing her story. It's been very difficult. Like I said, as I say, families shouldn't have to be solving their loved one's murder. And it's taken a toll. I'm going to get emotional again. It's taken, a toll on me and my family. And it's just been really hard. And it's I feel like my life is just, I don't know. It's not normal. But, there's a lot of people that have had to deal with this or, other tragedies. It's really hard cope sometimes, you know? So I'm grateful for any help. I'm grateful for you guys sharing her story.
It's a tragedy. It's 23 years, 24 years since the loss of her twin sister, Jody. The police are not very forthcoming with information. And Jenny, I know this might be a hard question to answer, but I mean, do you think that they would do anything at this point short of a African-American man that drives a white BMW to pull up in front and say, I did it? Do you think there's anything that would put them back on the case actively?
They're telling me, I mean, after the lawsuit, basically we came up with an agreement that basically the agreement's confidential. It was just basically I shut up and go away, and that they're going to be re-examining and reinvestigating the case. And so apparently they're working on things, but the hard thing is that I feel back to what I was saying is there's something not right. And with that being said, is her case ever going to be solved? I mean, if you look at it with $100,000 reward, with all the evidence that they have, what's going on that her case isn't solved? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's just, it's really upsetting to me that I feel that if they are hiding something, how do you ever get through?
We have a lot of police officers that listen to our programs. And perhaps some of them could email me with the concept of, and I mean this with no disrespect, but the police work to ensure our protection, to protect and serve. In a case where a woman is seeking justice for her sister and 23, 24 years later, nothing has happened in that case, why are law enforcement not more willing to come forward? And I'd love your insights. And Jenny, I wonder, do you ever think that maybe part of the reason they distance themselves from you is because you are a rogue element? They're afraid if they do give you a nugget of something, you may take it mainstream, public, do something with it that would be detrimental to the case. So in a sense, maybe they're trying to protect the case and protect your sister, her interests from your well-meaningness?
That's what they say. I mean, their one lawyer used to scream in my face and say, I'm ruining the case. And I mean, the bottom line is I feel that her case, the only reason why anything's happening is because of me in their face. You know what I mean? I mean, I've had several other families reach out to me that have been dealing with the same Baltimore County. I mean, there's 3 other families that have been reaching out to me over the years that have been dealing with the same nightmare with the police. And one just in particular, the girl, her mother was murdered. And I mean, it's incredible, the story, but there's so much evidence, DNA that could be tested, and it's just, they don't do anything. And she doesn't want to ruffle their feathers. And so she just sits back. And for me, I'm like, I feel better being proactive, or I guess that's the right word. I'm not going to sit back. Like, I'm going to be in their face. And, you know, I know I had people criticize me about it a little bit. You shouldn't, you're just making them more angry. But the bottom line is I'm here and I'm not going away, and I'm not going to you're not going to forget about Jody. You know what I mean? And like I said, not to say that I realize that they have other cases, but, you know, if you were to do the work, the work that should have been done, then I wouldn't be doing this. You know what I mean? Like, but for me to have people reach out to me, I mean, I had a cameraman for a Baltimore news station that had a 20-minute conversation with Jody in the bar that night before she died that night. And he was never interviewed. I mean, this was a local place where she would go, the media would go. And it turns out he didn't have the information, but You didn't interview the people she was talking to. I mean, she was with the bartender that she always talked to. They would have known who she was talking to. Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
right.
What else did you miss? Like, I keep finding all these things. The call that she made to she talked to the guy that she talked to in the parking lot, the girl, her friend's brother, her friend's boyfriend. They ruled him out. He was an African-American drug dealer, and they ruled him out. Day one, they said, oh yeah, well, he didn't drive. For years, I'm like, he knew where she was. He knows something. And they say, oh, well, he didn't drive. So part of, the lawsuit, the agreement, whatever, I had this whole list of stuff that I wanted them to look into. And I said, you need to go back and talk to him. So they go back and talk to him. Turns out he was at his place with his friend that night. So he didn't drive, but they find out 23 years later that he had his friend hanging out with him. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little, I don't know.
That's a lot. Yeah, no,
yeah,
I get it.
I mean, a little
yeah.
lot. I mean, so that's what I'm saying. I could give you example after example. Suspect number 2, the one has been in prison, and he was a drug dealer, and they would say the detective said he's a suspect, blah 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 blah. And I mean, I've saved all my communications with the detective, and he said, well, I said, did you talk to him? Did you interview him? And I have it in writing. He says, I can't recall if I spoke with him. I mean, I was like, what? You can't recall if you spoke with a suspect? But he did tell me that he would ask me, he was inappropriate. He would ask me about my relationship with my husband. And he told me how he was having a relationship with a suspect of a sister who killed her parents. And that he and his wife had been separated. Wow. And he would say things to me like I'd say, do you think there was something going on? Because I told you that Jody liked the owner of the bar. And I'd say, do you think there's something going on with Jody and this person? And he'd say, well, he's a sleaze and he'd have you both. Like, just the way he would talk to me.
I'm so sorry that you lost your sister and father through all of this, and the stress that it's put into your family life in doing what feels natural and right for you in seeking justice for your sister. I'm sorry that you've run into so many walls. It's heartbreaking to hear these aspects of your story and know that it continues without really much light at the end of the tunnel. We will, of course, put the show out and spread it through many different sources to make sure that people hear it. If you have a tip, folks, a legitimate tip, 410-200-6284. They have been through enough that they don't need to waste their time with ridiculous claims, stupid stories, or conspiracies. If you have a tip or know somebody who does, please reach out to 410-200-6284. If you know ways that you might be able to help reinvestigate this case and you have a legitimate ability to do this, and this isn't just an armchair investigative reporter, but somebody that is hands-on and knows the workings of the law and can aid in this, please reach out. Again, the information for our guest is on our website and on today's program, so you can find it. Justice, the number 4, then JODY.com. Justice4Jody.com. Click on it, check it out, share the link, share the story, get this out there. And especially friends of mine on the East Coast and Maryland and in that area, if you can help put this story out there, all the better. And if you can write to the governor of Maryland demanding justice, demanding somebody to take a fresh look at this case, please do what you can to help out. And Jenny, will you keep us apprised of any new and upcoming information that you get that might help this case? Definitely. I'm really grateful to you guys. I hope I didn't do too much talking. I know we talked about how I was going to. That's why we had you on the show, was to share your story, your sister's story, and remind people that this isn't a statistic that died. This was your sister. This was a human being that deserves answers and a family that deserves answers. So we wish you nothing but the best in the future and hope that in one of these ways you can find the answers you're looking for. All right, that's it, folks. Stay safe. We'll talk to you again next week right here on the best in True Crime Talk Radio. Darkness Radio presents True Crime Tuesday.